Greetings. Yesterday I appeared on Berean TV and discussed a few different language-related topics. I was on for a little over half an hour, but the overall show lasted nearly 12 hours, so as my little portion can get lost in such a long stream, I thought I'd isolate it and repost it on my own channel. Also, this seemed worthwhile because, as was noted in my previous video, I went from Berean's panel to a discussion on Sista E's channel, as she was under the impression that she had been insulted or misrepresented during my time on Berean. So providing the entire portion allows interested viewers to see everything which was said. Personally, I don't think there was anything outrageous in the brief portion where she was alluded to, but anyone who might be interested is invited to watch and decide for themselves. Finally, as this is a bit of a long discussion, like I said, it's going to be over half an hour, and it covers a few different topics, I'll also place a sort of index in the video description, which will note the timestamps at which specific topics come up or where significant shifts in the discussion happen. And when reference is made to a previous video, I'll also share a link to that. So this discussion is going to begin with Berean playing some footage of Ahlazar ben Lawya, the leader of Sakari. Technically, he was playing a video of mine, which was playing a video by Ahlazar, in which Ahlazar was commenting on a video of Michael Heiser and Vocab Malone. Perhaps humorously, a bit like the movie Inception's concept of a dream within a dream within a dream, you're going to be watching a video of a video of a video 5 layers deep. But whatever the case, here's the discussion. Enjoy, and God bless.
Of guys like Vocab Malone. Oh, Lashawan Quadash Hebrew, which is not really Hebrew at all. Is patois English? Yes, it is. It's a dialect of the English language. It's still English. Do people who speak patois speak the same as Americans? Speak the same as Canadians? Speak the same as Brits? No, but it's still English, right? So even if you're of the position that Aria made Lashawan Quadash up, right? I said he just made it up. This is fake. We're not speaking the right language. Let's entertain that. Or let's entertain that argument, though, right? Even if that's the case, it's still a Hebrew dialect. It's still phonetically based upon the Hebrew language, the Hebrew alphabet. We're saying Hebrew words. Your only actual formidable issue is that we don't pronounce these words and we don't follow the same grammatical rules in totality of standard accepted Hebrew. That doesn't make what we're saying not Hebrew. It doesn't. It's Hebrew. See, the Hebrew language is not like the French language. That's why Creole, right? Haitian Creole is not French. It's its own independent language, though it has a francophone base, right? But French, the French language has an institution that curtails it and tells you what French is and what French isn't. French is not a living language. The French language does not have room for growth. The French language is one standard thing and has been one standard thing for a very long time, which is why they reject Haitian Creole being a dialect of French, just like patois, what they speak in like Jamaica and the Bahamas. That's an English dialect, or even what is called Ebonics, what the slang amongst the African-American inner city communities is called Ebonics. That's still English, but it's called Ebonics. What we have in Haiti is similar. It's Haitian Creole, but French have a very strict guideline on as to what's French. So because Haitian Creole falls outside of that, they say that's not French. It's its own language. You understand what I'm saying? Hebrew does not have that same strict adherent. English does not have that same strict adherent, etc. Right? So if we are speaking a language that's built off and based around the Hebrew alphabet, we say words that are found in Scripture just in a different way than standard people who speak Hebrew do. We are actually still speaking Hebrew. Lashawan Quadash is still Hebrew. The only contention that you would have is it's a form of Hebrew that was curtailed in the 70s by Aria and others, and it's not ancient. You can make that contention, and we can deal with that. Even if you contend we made it up, it's still Hebrew. You can't take away from that. So if you go, it's not really Hebrew. No, it is still Hebrew. You can call it Lashawan Quadash Hebrew. You can call it One West Hebrew. God damn it, you can call it Harlem Hebrew. All that's fine. It's still Hebrew.
Honestly, I would say that I'm largely in agreement with what Ahlazar said in that segment.
All right, he said it's Hebrew, but basically it's like ghetto Hebrew.
Yeah, like a more inner city slang.
All right, what do y'all? All right. Black folk got Ebonics and slang. So y'all, what do y'all think about that?
But hold on, no, because the whole thing is the argument comes up. I'm not gonna say by them, but there's certain folks who come and say that the Paleo Hebrew is original, and this is how it's pronounced.
Explain to Boo.
Oh, Abu's back. You wanna put the link out?
I did already, I think.
Let me put it back out again.
Oh.
All right. Now, Abu, if you can jump on, it's like Ebonics. So it's not the original Hebrew. Is that what folks are agreeing to? This isn't the original Hebrew, just a derivation of Hebrew.
All right, I'm putting the link out there, but everybody else, can y'all go with what he just explained?
Okay. Let me see. They say they claim Lashawan Quadash correct Hebrew. He changed the goalposts. That's what I'm wondering about. Put a link out there, Berean. Abu. Abu saying I say it's modern. Yeah, because that's the whole thing. One argument that come up is that what they speak over there, they'll say it's Yiddish, that's not real Hebrew and all that kind of stuff. So what the things we're using with Creole and French. All right.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Boo.
Yeah, actually, in this very video that you were playing, I go on to say that I think it's Hebrew. Ahlazar himself has mentioned that in subsequent videos. There's a video of him, sort of celebrating the fact that I said that I do think Lashawan Quadash qualifies as Hebrew. Other members of Sakari, I've seen they've thrown that at certain critics of Lashawan Quadash. So what I would say is that Lashawan Quadash is essentially, first off, it is a language. People want to say, oh, it's not a language. It qualifies as language as far as I'm concerned, insofar that theoretically, at least, you can communicate in it, you can transmit information in it, right? I would just say it's not a living language. It's an artificial language. And in terms of where it would fall, I think it's clearly a form of Hebrew, right? Grammatically and at least in theory, grammatically, it's identical to modern Israeli Hebrew, and his vocabulary is clearly biblical for the most part, right? So in that sense, not only is it a language, it's a form of Hebrew. But what I would say it is it's a modern innovation in which someone took modern Israeli Hebrew and stripped it of its range of vocalizations. That's really my understanding of Lashawan Quadash. But I do agree with Ahlazar that it qualifies as a form of Hebrew. I don't think it's a living language, but I would say it's artificial. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but the analogy I would reach for is maybe Klingon or Elvish or Esperanto. Like in the early days of Esperanto, when Esperanto was first developed, I think it was largely it wasn't a living language at that time. I don't know if it qualifies as a living language now because there's thousands of speakers, and allegedly there's stories about people teaching their children Esperanto and talking Esperanto at home. So maybe it's a living language now, but maybe Esperanto is a good neutral analogy.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Boo. But with Esperanto, though, they have learning clubs and they do speak it.
Yeah.
It seems like with Lashawan Quadash, it's more ceremonial.
Yeah, no, and it seems that nobody knows it. Like, for example, there was a brief period where there was a guy named Harab, I think his name was. He was like an old timer from the one old pre-split One West days, and Daniela brought him out as sort of like the leading expert on Lashawan Quadash, and even that gentleman, the little bit that he shared, it showed a shaky command of the grammar. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm no expert myself. I'm an amateur myself. But the point is that I don't think anyone, any proponent of Lashawan Quadash speaks it. This is Mitzilel has brought up that point. He said, if you find well, let me not say that. It's a little rough. But he was, honestly, I don't think, others have said this. It doesn't seem like any proponent of Lashawan Quadash is actually, competent in the language, able to have a conversation. You won't find two people that can have a detailed conversation in the language.
Okay.
Also, they don't talk like Yiddish. They don't talk to each other like that.
No, maybe just a few sentences, a few phrases, like shalom, shalom, mashlamcha. Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff.
Oh, so it ain't like Yiddish, like a full blown language then.
No, Yiddish is a full blown living language, and it once had definitely not like Yiddish.
Yeah,
I think maybe Klingon or Elvish might be now I've never looked actually at Klingon and Elvish, but my understanding is that they have defined vocabularies and defined grammars, and so in that sense, and maybe there's almost, I'm guessing there might not be any real speakers of Klingon or Elvish. Maybe there is. Yeah.
There's some people that Star Trek community, that Klingon is strong, and when you go to conventions, sometimes they're having conversations and whatnot.
That's interesting.
So it's even to say Klingon might be more of a living language than Lashawan Quadash in terms of usage and that kind of stuff, frequency.
Oh well, but if it's like Ebonics, I guess well, people make up stuff. If it's like Ebonics and the way he explained it, I guess
there's no issue with
that. No, that's actually a good analogy. So-called Ebonics, or some people say Ave. I mean, clearly that's a language it's a dialect of English, clearly, and you could talk about the influences on it from other languages, just like Yiddish is a dialect of German and so on down the line, or Ladino is a dialect of Spanish. So yeah, although that's clearly a living language though, which is evolving and spoken by many people and stuff like that.
Well, I guess that would make sense why I guess he wouldn't want to debate it, because it's like debating an English teacher on King James or English and you talking about hood talk in Ebonics. So I guess
it's tough. That's a tough subject. I think he's been around for a long time. He's aware of the criticisms of Lashawan Quadash, and so I think what's at issue is that he knows it's a difficult subject, right? I'm not trying to say anything bad about Ahlazar. I respect Ahlazar, but I think he senses that it's a difficult subject. So what would be difficult is attempting to demonstrate which is the original, and perhaps, I'm only guessing here, perhaps he understands it to be a thing of faith, which is that's the position that Tahar has taken. That on a certain level, you recognize certain men as prophets, and you understand their claims to be a test, a matter of faith. I don't know. Maybe he can discuss that. One thing I want to say in Ahlazar's defense, I think, in general, any of us, if we were going to debate, there are going to be topics we're interested in debating and other topics we prefer not to debate. We don't have to. Like, for example, James White, years ago, after he debated Rachash Shayar from GOCC, there was talk about him debating Zion Lex. And one of the things that turned James White off was Zion Lex at the time was, doing stuff on numerology. And, James White wanted someone who was a little bit more straightforward with the text, not getting into mysticism and numerology and stuff like that. And so I think, that's something to keep in mind. All of us, we're going to have subjects we'd like to debate and subjects that we would prefer, say, no, that's not for me, that's for somebody else, So I don't hold it as a knock against Ahlazar that he would say, I'd rather discuss this, not that. And I imagine the same in the private discussions. Maybe the same things were coming from Dr. Brown. Perhaps there were things that were raised where he was like, yeah, I'd rather not discuss that. I'd rather discuss these ideas.
Look at this. Well, that's totally different. I think, to be honest, I never heard him explain. I never heard nobody explain that was the best explanation. Is the mere fact that he equated it with Ebonics. I understand that perfectly. I understand it, and I understand why it's so. I have no beef with that from here on out. It's like a Hebrew Ebonics. Look at this though. Look at Bruce. Look at Bruce.
He said, no one knows the original Hebrew. When the Messiah returns, he will give us a pure lip and a pure language. Okay, that's fine, but it also would beg a question about what we mean by pure. Like, for example, was Christ speaking a true form of Hebrew, or was he already speaking a corrupted form of Hebrew? Because the New Testament gives us vocalizations, just like the Septuagint does. Like, we can get a sense of the range of vocalizations that existed in the time of Christ, because we have all these transliterations from the Septuagint, from Josephus, from Philo, from the Greek New Testament. And now, keep in mind the difference between like mainstream forms, plural, mainstream forms of Hebrew, and Lashawan Quadash is mainly a disagreement about pronunciation and vocalization. But we can see that at least in the time of Christ, the same range of vocalizations existed. The forms of Hebrew that existed in antiquity differed from modern Hebrew and even from the Hebrew of the Masoretic text, it seems, but nonetheless, they had the same range of vocalizations, So while maybe we don't know what Hebrew was exactly like in a given point in antiquity, one thing we can say is that the extant evidence seems to lean away from Lashawan Quadash. So maybe it does, like what I would say is that it doesn't prove modern Israeli Hebrew to be the true form of Hebrew. I would say, like any modern language, it's the descendant, it's the result of an evolution. But the point is that Lashawan Quadash doesn't win by default, and it seems to clearly be lack evidence, and there seems to be ancient evidence against it. Like, it seems to be clear Christ wasn't speaking Lashawan Quadash, nor were the other Jews at the time. There seems to be strong evidence against it, and that's what that was vocab's point in appealing to the cry on the cross.
Hey, so with that, Abu, just for clarity's sake, so I don't think I'm crazy. Were there people who were making claims, doesn't matter who, that Lashawan Quadash was the original Hebrew? the original pronunciation.
Yes, of course, that was the original claim. And that's an important distinction. So if people wanted
You
to
can't make that claim. They can't make that claim. Now, I don't know, but go ahead. Let me hear what he got to say.
So over the years, I've encountered people who would say, well, like, why do you have to come against it? Why can't we just have our own thing, you know, our own form of Hebrew, our own dialect? This is what I would say.
I could Bonics. I could go for that.
If people wanted to say this is a thing that their community created for their time and it's their invention and their innovation, no objection. Do whatever you want to do with Hebrew. Languages are malleable. You can make all kinds of changes you want, and whatever works for your community works for your community. The dispute was the claim that this is the true form of Hebrew and this is where the evidence points. And that was the original debate, and that's what people were saying, that this and honestly, I do believe that Lashawan Quadash was created within One West to inoculate their members against objections that appealed to the Hebrew text, because they were very much grounded just in their favorite English translation. And so when people would raise questions about the Hebrew text, I think they basically trained their members to block out anything automatically that used vocalizations they don't agree with, sort of train them to say, well, that's not even Hebrew, that's Yiddish. No, that's Yiddish, as if to just shut down the conversation. That's the impression that I'm under.
Now is that that's what I'm saying. Who started that talking about this is the original?
Well,
Yo, Bruce, let me ask you a question. Millennial reign, everybody gonna speak Hebrew? Go ahead.
And then Abu, go ahead. Because now the whole thing is, because for Bruce too, how do we know how to pronounce the sacred name? If the language is corrupted, as people are saying, and not pure.
Excellent question.
So can sacred namers stand firm on their beliefs about saying the name correctly and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I think that was the point of Lashawan Quadash. That was one of the points, was to say, like, we have the true names because we have the true Hebrew, you know? And as for the question that's on the screen right now from Robert M., I think Ahlazar was merely giving an analogy, but he was not claiming that it's a modern innovation. He was merely saying, I understand if vocab and people with him want to say it's a modern innovation, but it's still Hebrew. He wasn't agreeing with the accusation, but he was saying at least that accusation is understandable. What's not justified is saying it's not Hebrew at all. You know?
Yes, so, and at least he's saying yes. That's
But Ahlazar's position, I'm pretty sure his position is that it's the ancient Hebrew, you know? That it's the true Hebrew, the original. Okay. I think he's called it pre-exilic Hebrew.
Wow.
Yeah, but they're not because I'm folks in Christ didn't speak Yiddish either. But the whole standpoint is, it's like every argument, everything we bring up, it always goes back to them folk. But why can the claim just be examined on the stance of itself? So we're saying, if you accept Lashawan Quadash like how was being expressed in the video, then how can you reject Yiddish as being a modernized version where people are at? Vocalization, things of that nature. Is that fair to say, Abu?
Sorry about that. I was muted. What I would say that I'm sorry, Orthodox Moor's question threw me off, or his statement threw me off. I got to get into that. What I would say is that, if the pronunciation of Hebrew is up for debate, if no one knows, then you can turn around and apply that to people who are claiming to know the true pronunciation. Regarding what Orthodox Moor has pointed out, he said the good doctor claimed, and by the good doctor we mean Pastor Kelly, the good doctor claimed that Dr. Efrem Isaac confirmed the pronunciation of Lashawan Quadash. That's amazing. I got to see that. I'm gonna ask him to share that with me if that's true. I do know that Kelly does try to reapply the illogic of Lashawan Quadash to Ge'ez, and he claims that even Ge'ez was once called Ga'az, and that it once was all A-class vowels, and it's humorous. I was thinking about making a video about that in the near future, but
I don't know. I can't. I'll just hold off and to see what's going on with that right there. Go ahead.
Hold on, Boo. So, let me not do it. All right. Are the pews? Are there any of the pews written in Lashawan Quadash?
You know, it's funny. Even Kelly doesn't say that. His attempt to transcribe a pew so far is basically Yiddish. I mean, it's honestly, I would say it's worse than Yiddish, but it's basically Yiddish. Essentially, because check out what he says. First off, he celebrates the fact that he has a scholar, a secret scholar. He doesn't say who the scholar is, but I do think it's real, being that the email doesn't actually agree with his position. He has some scholar. He won't say who this guy is, but he has an email from a scholar with the name obscured, a scholar saying that he doesn't see Hebrew on any of the pews that he looked at, but there's a remote possibility that one of the pews sort of looks like English in Hebrew characters. He said, I'm not saying that's what it actually is, but there's a remote possibility. So that would be basically Yiddish, right? That's, Yiddish is German written in Hebrew characters. And so essentially he's talking about a different Germanic language written in Hebrew characters. And then when Kelly tries to transcribe one of the pews, he says it's, first off, it's the word Yisrael, and he claims it's Israel, but it's spelled completely different with 5 yods and a zayin, no shin, no sin, no aleph, right? And so he tries to justify that by saying, oh, look, in the Polish use of the Latin script, they also use a Z. So he's literally appealing Z in Israel. He said he literally appeals to Polish use of the Latin script to justify his sort of ahistorical reading of one of the pews, and it's not in Lashawan Quadash. And then on top of that, now he's claiming the pew says Israel Yom, which he says means Israel's day or Israel's time. And the funny thing is that the syntax of it would also be basically English, where, in Semitic languages, if you want to say, like, if you want a noun to be possessed by another noun, like King of the Jews, right? The noun that's possessed would come before the noun which possesses it. And then in English, we do it, we reverse that. Like we say the Jews' king or the Jews' temple, something like that. So his thing is, it even uses a Germanic syntax, Israel's Yom, Israel's day. So it's almost like, it's more like Yiddish than Hebrew, the proposals that he's making, But I'd say it's worse than Yiddish because of the spelling and the, it's really off, and there's a lot to be, I might be touching on that in a future video, because my next video, I hope, God willing, Lord willing, if the Lord wills, is going to be on the inconsistency of his polemics against an Arabic reading for the pew and his sort of, much less stringent rules for Hebrew on a pew. But I actually have a video on that titled "Is There Yiddish on the Pews?" which gets into the methodology of this. You might find it interesting.
Yeah, we should just left them pews alone. We should just left them pews alone. Them pews started the whole. I think it's because of the pews that. Well, I could be wrong. I'm thinking it's because of the pews that whole Katz thing and all of this stuff came up. We could just left them pews alone.
But we could have. What I always say about the pews is this, right? The issue with the pews has to do with the character of Kelly and Brown. Because think about Orthodox Moor. I always give this analogy. There's no problems between me and Orthodox Moor, right? We don't disagree. We don't agree on the pews. We have different views. But because both of us are open to just having an open and respectful conversation on methodology, we get along just fine, right? The problem was Kelly and Brown were against having an open conversation about, consistent methodology. And their whole thing was to try to shut the conversation down by saying, oh, look, we got a scholar. That's it. No more talk. Everything was always no more talk. And so the Katz thing was another attempt at no more talk. And then, unfortunately, as like a sign of their characters, like I said earlier, it's not like it was just one lie. It wound up slowly getting compounded with other lies, like Katz had to go into hiding. And then, as you know, you were told that we were being put on a government watch list, a secret government watch list, while our videos were being flagged. And, and so, and the latest one that was on your show last August, I actually confirmed that Katz is real because we have an audio tape of him, this kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think they were just trying to help the awakening, strengthen their position on awakening. I think that's all that was right there. And when you eager, you want to try to, and even the other brother, I shout out to him. He caught me when the whole thing happened. And he was like, man, the guy's name was used and, it wasn't even done on your platform. It's not no big thing, but I'm just looking at it like, these pastors and, this awakening is so important. And if everything don't stand on it, it's not the end of the world. I think it wasn't done with no. I can't use the word ill intent, but it is what it is.
What I would say is that it seems we should have just had an open conversation. I think the ill intent comes in with the desire to shut the conversation down, to prevent other views, dissenting arguments from making it into the echo chamber. That's why the whole thing has been about shutting conversations down and censorship. Like I've talked about, Kelly admitted that he was the one who told Sista E to dismantle her forum. She used to have a forum on Facebook, that was dedicated to open dialogue between Israelites and non-Israelites. And she shut it down. And by Kelly's own admission, it was under the influence of Kelly, because he didn't like where the discussions were going, and it's everything is, and that's why their channels are so heavily censored, That's
talking about said it's manipulation. The only reason that I really bang and talk about that because it's like that Kelly and Brown. I was the tightest. I was real tight with Brown and Sista E. I was real tight with them. And then Pastor Kelly used to start coming on, and I'm like, all right, these are some good people. They could represent another side of the awakening outside of the camp. And they kind of, I look at those people like all in the stream of Stephen Darby. I look at that, so I'm thinking this thing is totally legit. Everything is on the up and up. And then, little stuff like that start happening, and Pastor Kelly start posting some stuff, and, stuff being said that he pulling it back like it's pseudo, but he didn't know. And it just started being a whole, then it just started going downhill. That Katz thing just messed the whole to me. They just say they want that whole moderate movement, just messed the whole thing up. And then for years later to find out that they knew it was a lie and they wasn't even dealing with Brown. And then she beefing about, that was a private conversation. Well, the truth came out.
Mm-hmm.
The truth came out. That y'all and they leaders in the community. Pastor Kelly got 40,000 now. How many? When Pastor Kelly jumped on my joint, he had 800.
Mm-hmm. Something like 39,000 now, yeah.
So they end up being leaders in what we would call a moderate movement, and we talk about Darby, and we trying to think of this thing a Christian thing. Then they come up a little. So you start. I think it was first time I heard it. Pastor Kelly was like, the best of your ability. I was like, oh Lord, that ain't sounding. But we gonna keep going. We going in. We gonna be talking. We just thinking everything good. Man, that Katz thing, like, oh man, if y'all lie about this, I don't know what other lies are they out there. Then there was some questions on the whole Lashawan Quadash, the language, and some stuff it just started looking bad. And then, like I said, I knew for real it was an echo chamber when they was like, listen, we no longer support Berean, and he said that, and then tell you when them start running, that's the whole moderate movement. But that's what they do. They're an echo chamber. Dante, Kelly, Sista E, KU Ministries, Brownback, all of them is a moderate. All of them is an echo chamber. It's an echo chamber. Ain't nothing open for no disagreement. Ain't nothing open for nothing.
Although shout out to Dante, he got out early. He got out early on the Katz thing.
No, because they trying to move. They trying to deal with a whole movement, so they gotta go ahead and they gotta do that. They say they want dialogue. They don't want no dialogue. They don't want no dialogue. I said y'all name. Do what y'all want to do. I said y'all name. And it ain't no beef. I love y'all, but that's the truth. That is the truth. And y'all just doing what y'all do. Can't be questionable. Dude talking about Africa ain't over there. All right. You talking about the 400 years. All right, let's talk about it. They don't want to talk about it, so they're going to tell everybody, we don't go to Berean. Don't mess with Berean, because stuff that they put out there, they don't want to discuss. They doing the same thing, the Yap gang. They done did the same thing. Them yo people, Bruce. They done did them was Bruce always praising. They done did this. This is what I see going on with Black Castic. Like y'all trying to shut down conversation, man. Ain't none of that cool to me. Ain't none of that cool to me. Y'all handlers. When I say the handlers, I'm talking to y'all. I'm talking about y'all. Do whatever y'all want to do. I'm telling y'all what it is. Go ahead.
I think Moore jumped on.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, peace and blessings to the panel. Peace and blessings to the chat. I had to jump on right quick because Abu's being mad modest right quick. Because the other day...
all right, I want to hear the immodest version. I'm looking forward to this. Good cop, bad cop. Go ahead.
I won't be that bad of a cop. We'll be like a good cop, better cop. You know what I'm saying? How about that?
All right, that's good.
But like so Abu's somebody whose position is that there's no discernible language on the pews, right? And Abu did something that gained my respect, and everyone should respect what he did in this, where he tried to falsify his own position, right? And he sent pictures of a pew where he thought it potentially could say Surah 114. It's just a ayat from Surah 114 in a hypothetical context and whatnot. And he was getting hit back. Some people were saying no, some people saying yes, etc. But now there is a channel that's not so itty bitty. It's got 175,000 subscribers called the Ember Stein channel, which is dedicated to kind of diffusing Islamophobia in a sense, right? In America and whatnot. They put out an interesting video just the other day talking about Muslims in early America, and they happened to reference the First African Baptist Church and the very pew that Abu was talking about, and they say that Surah 114 and ayat off of Surah 114 is on there. And this is the same pew that Abu was describing earlier, to where the good doctor was saying that Israel Yom or Yisrael Yom or Israel time is on there. And so they're talking about the fact that there's like a conspiracy being put out by PBS to stipulate that there's potentially Arabic on not even all the pews, just on some of the pews. But now they're going to have to break down this conspiracy by the Amber Stein group as well or whatnot, because the more and more people who are looking at these pews who have a background in Arabic or whatnot, they can see some Arabic on the pews or whatnot. Now that doesn't mean that there's not other languages. There's not potentially Hebrew or whatnot. There's not potentially Ge'ez. There's not potentially other West African scripts or whatnot. But to deny Arabic is just amazing at this juncture, because there's a lot of scholarship that points to Arabic. Again, this is what's important about what the Amber Stein video talks about as well. They specify that there was a blending of Christianity and Islam amongst some of the people who came across in the slave trade. In the PBS documentary about the Black Church, they talk about the blending and fusings of traditions and whatnot. And so it's important to understand this and why that church is so important and why it's a national treasure for anybody who comes out of the slave trade and whatnot, because you have all these different, there's 27 different people who make up the Gullah Geechee people in the linguistic structure and whatnot, right? You get those fingerprints all throughout the church potentially, right? But to shut the conversation down, like this stuff can't happen, these people can't be here, this language can't be here, you're trying to not just erase history, you're erasing people, right? That's mad disrespectful, fam.
And then more, even with that, even if we were to say they weren't Muslim, at that point in history, at that point in the world, Arabic would be a lingua franca, just like how Greek would be in the first century, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's the point that they make. Like, again, Boubacar Diakite, he's from Mali himself, a West African Muslim from Mali. He comes out and says in the PBS documentary, they may not have been Muslim. They may have been Christian themselves. Right? Again, in the Amber Stein video, they're not claiming that the people who potentially wrote a Surah 114 in that ayat there are Muslim. They're saying no, they're people who are blending Christianity with it and whatnot, right? And again, this is important to understand, because people need to understand the people who are coming to America or to North America in the slave trade, where we get the populations from the Gullah Geechee, etc. They're coming mainly from the Senegambia and whatnot. And historically, there is a Christian population there prior to colonialism that's Christian up until like the 1300s, and then they convert to Islam. So this blending of Christianity and Islam and whatnot, people need to understand, because these people, again, like in West Africa, there's a time period where like it's not necessarily, some of it's a peaceable conversion, some is forcible conversion, right? When they're coming off the slave ship, they don't have to practice forcible conversion anymore, right? So if there's people who have a Christian tradition who are forced to practice one thing in Africa and whatnot, but they're not forced to in America, and they can do their own thing, you should pay attention to how they're doing their thing and whatnot. But this blend of Islam and Christianity, like, you shouldn't be surprised about that if there's Christians that are historically from the same area and whatnot, right? And so we really need to a lot of people they look at Gullah Geechee stuff or they look at slave narratives, and they assume that we only were taught Christianity when we got off the slave ship, and they'll recognize that a lot of people stepped off the slave ship with Christianity, right? And a lot of people don't talk about what that looks like, what that tradition looks like, and all that type of stuff. But again, we see something that Boo and I both talk about. You can read in Sylviane Diouf's book and other books, but her book, Servants of Allah and whatnot, she breaks down a Mandingo slave in Savannah, Georgia, in the same time period, named London, who wrote down the first semblance of the Gullah language ever, right? That they've been able to find. It was the Gospel of John, written in the Gullah dialect, using the Arabic script. So again, this concept of we have to rule out anything Arabic because it's got to be automatically Islamic. No, that doesn't make sense. Arabic was the lingua franca of West Africa. If you were an Israelite in West Africa coming over on the slave, understand it's more like the likelihood that you're going, again, this is their narrative, family. Understand this. Their narrative is that Go back to the Boom Church. Go back to the documentary we're talking about, all the type of stuff. They're going to talk to you about the fact that this Hebrew, this Sola Trail came from an Ashkenazi mulatto boy. And it's more plausible that for them that cursive Hebrew is on those pews, and they got there again. It didn't come across the slave trade. The slaves didn't know Sola Trail coming off the slave ship. They got taught it by again a man who bought a slave, knocked up his wife, and then taught that child Sola Trail. An Ashkenazi supposedly taught Sola Trail, which is a Latin. We're talking about a Spanish cursive Hebrew script, right? A Latin cursive Hebrew script. An Ashkenazi supposedly taught his son this Sola Trail script, of which the Sephardic Jews in the area have not been documented in using yet. We cannot find Sola Trail amongst the people that were there. They came across with their own Torah, circumcision box, etc. We can't find it amongst them. But again, an Ashkenazi mulatto learned this from his father, and that's how it got on the pews, etc. Or is it more plausible that the people that came off the slave ship dealt with the lingua franca of the area they came from? What's more plausible?
Yeah, you got the mic.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't
know. No. Go ahead. No. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. They already said y'all trying to stop the Wiggins, so I'm getting rid of these two guys right here.
Yeah.